Uh-oh. Let me check. Am I too shiny? Is my hair right? I don't care. It's BenjaCon 2021 and we're coming at you raw. This is Show versus Business Wednesdays, but for BenjaCon week. So what does this mean? Well, this means we're going to have a special little joint for you today where we discuss the show versus business background as opposed to our normal show versus business kind of thing we do every Wednesday. I'm going to be having on my man Theo, obviously with show versus business, but this time we're just going to talk a little bit about the background, what the show means, why we created it. Think of it like one of those Comic-Con panels where you get the behind the scenes of the show, what happens, what goes on, how it came to be. You're going to get a little creative vibe like that. Theo and I have been college roommates. He was in engineering. I was in computer information systems. We didn't hit it off right away, but within a very short time, we were vibing, but it was one of those odd couple kind of things. He would go left, I'd go right. And it's just been a great time. And it's a great example of how people can come together from, I don't want to say different backgrounds, but come together with different points of view, different angles, and still find good common relatable ground. And that's why we work together so well now. So he'll be on here in a little bit. And, oh, guys, look at this. I done said my title was BenjaCon 2022. See, that's what happens when you're just making stuff. You end up in the future somewhere. So we'll have him on in a second. But if you haven't checked out the Show versus Business podcast, search your major podcast platforms, iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Amazon has a whole podcast thing now, so if you're looking on Amazon Music, you can find podcasts there. Podbean, I know some people like that. I personally like Castbox. It allows you to create a good little list of favorites and make your own playlist of podcasts. So when people are online dropping knowledge, you can go in and save, who you were listening to, where you left off. You can download, save it to a playlist, favorite certain items. It's just really good organization for playing out your podcast if you've got a lot of them that you're trying to keep track of. So that was me. But the crux of this is going to be about show versus business. If you haven't checked it out, let us know. And if you have, let us know that as well. We want to know what you think about it. We're going to be building out new content. We're going to be building out new what's up, Theo? We're going to be building out new content. We're going to be building out new ways of bringing you information. We haven't decided on exactly how we're going to do that, but it's coming at you. The content's good, and it's just a matter of finding the right outlets that we want to work with this. So let's see. We'll get Theo in a second right here. Bada boom, bada bing. Yeah. But yeah, I would say that a lot of this comic stuff and a lot of going forward with this wouldn't have happened without this guy. He's been he's a family man, a steadfast worker, comes from Florida and California, kind of like I do now. So we definitely share that in common. And what we're going to do in the future is see if we can bring some of the business side into a lot of this this comic book discussion that we've been having. Like, we discussed the Netflix, Amazon Prime, and all the streaming wars, finding out what's going on behind the scenes that affects your favorite shows. We talk about, all the new ways that storytelling is evolving and changing through streaming, through the internet, through the way trailers are produced. We get a lot of those things going on. And we're always just doing different things, and we're going to go ahead and bouncing off with my man Theo. And if you have anybody who needs to hear this, there should be a little share button. So make sure you share that out and let them know that we're on live now with T. Harvey 2012. Theo, what's going on, brother?
What's up, man? What's up? How you doing?
I am doing good, man. I'm doing good. funny. Yesterday I didn't put any lotion on, but I was looking all shiny. Today I put stuff on and I'm not as shiny. So I don't know, this whole lighting thing and being in front of the camera. I mean, I'm doing it, but I'm just like, come on now, this is something I got to worry about too.
I know, man. Yeah, it's just, it's a new world, man. We have to get with it. So, man, I'm happy to be part of BenjaCon 2021, man. What's up?
Yeah, have you checked out any of the other interviews or discussions?
I will say I have not yet, but I want to check it out later when I would do some driving tomorrow. But I'm sure they're pretty insightful.
So speaking on that, what I haven't done yet is kick them over to the Mr. Benja's ADD Experience, which is the actual podcast. So you can listen to that on your podcast player as well. So that'll be there, working out the pipeline. So I'm getting all these discussions, this great content, these interviews, this new front facing person you see in front of you, getting all that rolled together. I even got a new website thing. Wix wasn't working out, so now I called one of my IT friends, and I'm like, hey man, I got to do this real. So we're about to make a premium site that'll just flow.
I love it, man. 2021, off to a bang, brother.
That's right. So start this off. I got to ask you a serious question. You ready?
Uh-oh. Okay.
Are you raw or are you in the mix?
I love it, man. I love it. I don't know if you asked all your guests that, but
no.
I would say, let's see. That's interesting. I fluctuate between both stages, but I think right now I'm trying to get in the mix, right? I think that's kind of my mode right now. So there you go. Do you want to explain to people what that is, or you just want to leave it out there?
Well, since you're our guest here, we had this discussion a long time. I don't know how it came up, but we just started having this discussion about being raw or in the mix. So I actually gave a little description of it in one of my earlier ones. So I want to hear your point of view on the idea of being raw or in the mix.
Yeah, man, it's just the age-old question. It's basically extrovert, introvert, or the worker or the showman. And so I think raw is basically that person that just knows his stuff, right? Whether it's in coding or whether it's a director or just someone who just knows the in and out, the technical details of how to get a thing done. I mean, that's just raw guys, right? We've all met guys like that, just a master at their craft, right? Whatever it is. And then there's folks that are in the mix. And these are those, for lack of a better term, the shit talkers, the marketing guys that just run their mouth. And for whatever reason, they always get into the best club. They always sit in their VIP. They're sitting next to Bill Clinton taking a selfie. They're just they're just in the mix, man. I mean, and so, but in life, you need both, right, to be successful, because you can't be all style and no substance, and you can't just be raw. No one knows who you are. So I think that's the age-old debate that you and I have had since, well, wow.
Yeah.
Over 20 years, where are you in your life? And it can fluctuate, right? But
totally.
I think, we all kind of, fluctuating between those two extremes, basically. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Very true. Very true. And before we continue here, I want to thank everybody who's jumped in. Omar, DJ Byman, SensorMed is in here. Ooh, SensorMed's in here. Uchi Vinay is in here. And my man, Hefe Hoon, Jeff popped through yesterday, so we had a great little discussion there. You remember Jeff, right?
Of course, man. Love Jeff, man. Love Jeff.
Awesome. Jeff is surprisingly a great balance of being raw and in the mix. He just kind of goes and does his thing, and you're like, wow, I'm not like, he's not like standing up doing all these presentations saying how raw he is, but he's always getting stuff done. And he's not always running around with the big banner saying, hey, look at what I've got. But you never forget that he's there. So he's one of those examples of being raw and in the mix.
I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, I tend to. So I do agree with what you were saying. Right now, I'm totally I had a epiphany. Somebody said at an art show one day, they were like, yeah, best artist ever. No one knows about him. And they just walked out the gallery and they were talking about somebody's art we were looking at. And I was just like, yeah, all right. And of course, it stuck with me, probably because I was thinking about it at the time. But then later on, I was doing some things and trying to get them out there. And I started listening to Gary V, him doing all his talking. Gary V and all his ilk, right? I'm not just him. But yeah, I was sitting there. I was sitting there and like, yeah, all hype. I'm all hyped up. I'm like, yeah. I sat down and had to put down what I was doing and said, you know what? I think I actually know enough right now, and I'm out of balance. I need to start putting myself out there more. So that's kind of what led to a lot of and this has been over a couple years where I've trying to been understanding of how social media works, how getting out there works, how the business side works as opposed to the show side. So I don't know, from your perspective, you've seen me going about doing my thing. I don't know. I don't even know how I look doing this out there thing, but I'm trying.
Go.
I got a little lag here. So if you're listening in the comments, let us know if you think yourself, or are you raw or in the mix? Are you more the show side or more the business side? Yeah, this connection is choppy. So Instagram does a good thing with this IGTV. I'm not sure about how raw their engineers are, though, now that I'm experiencing this choppiness here. But hold on, we're going to have him come back in. You're back. All right, Theo says he's back, but I'm not getting the feed there. Actually, you know what's interesting? I don't know how to kick somebody out. If anybody knows how to kick somebody out so we can bring him back in, let me know. But yeah, so classic examples of raw dogs versus people that are in the mix. By the way, let me know in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. Does that make any sense to everybody? The raw versus in the mix. I know, right? Thanks, Jeff. IG is neither raw or in the mix at the moment. Man, I tell you. I may have to cut this up as a comedy reel because this is like half robot speaking, and it's still got all of your information buffered in there. No, that's that. Yeah, I actually don't know how to kick somebody out of the room. How do? Oh, there he goes. Boom. All right. I removed Robot Theo, that imposter who was in here on Instagram chopping things up. Uh, I don't know what that's about. Theo, if you're still listening and still on, obviously, you may want to. I had to restart my phone before. Um, we do the thing all the time, so I don't know if it's something with the connection. We can try that, and then you can come back and let us know about raw versus in the mix. But yeah, it's this classic idea of something being, working out the skills, the talent versus working on your networking and showmanship. So on the in the mix side, you've usually got the people who are a little more emotional, And in the mix side, you've usually got your introverts, your craftsmen, your developers, um, and your people who are, thinking about making a plan or doing math formulas. All right, let's get this back on here. All right. Yes.
I'm back.
You turned into Robot Theo for a second with the voice.
Oh
So,
man, sorry. Yeah, I think Jeff said it best. IG was neither raw or nor in the mix, so it was terrible. I'm back.
yeah. All right. So, what were you saying? Because you were saying stuff and it just kept buffering.
Shoot, man. Can you? I'm just trying to remember where I left it off at. I just said that you were always been a good mix of both. Does that make sense, if you will?
Okay.
And so what I mean
Yeah.
by
Well,
that is,
I believe the same for you. Go.
yeah, what I meant by that was like, I saw you go to your room in the hole and, come out, just do some hardcore coding, but you also ran organizations, right? You were presidents and you gave speeches and you organized, hundreds of people to do different things. So I thought that was a good mix. And so to see you doing what you're doing now, right? Just putting yourself out there more, I think it's just a natural progression. And I think, people got to realize in this social media era, we have to kind of do more of that. And so I commend you. And matter of fact, I'm trying to follow your lead. I think it's commendable. That's for sure.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. And on the other side, you've put together some great business moves. Doing things on your own and with people, but kind of running a business the way you do is a different level of in the mix that I'm not fully there yet. So, I've worked with partners and worked with people, but, you're handling business in a different way. So, we're definitely going to learn from each other. And speaking of which, just to let people know a little bit of who you are a little bit, let us know about SensorMed. What is that?
Yeah. SensorMed is a kind of like a telehealth, digital health solution that helps patients and doctors communicate more effectively. So this is something idea that came about when my daughter was first born, dealing with traveling to see doctors, waiting in waiting rooms for 2 hours, and then only having to see the doctor for 5 minutes. And I just figured, it had to be a better way to do this. And so at the time, I was doing video technologies, and I figured we could do the same with doctor and patient communications. And so it kind of evolved out of that. And so healthcare is definitely a challenging business to be in, because you deal with a lot of laws around patient protection, data protection, and other things. But it's been fulfilling. So it's been a great experience, and definitely out here trying to promote the business. So that's definitely my day job, right? But then I think you and I are starting something interesting in another area that just has always been a part of me when we talk about like show business and how's it relevant and how is it changing now. And so that's been a passion of mine for years. And so we can definitely talk a little bit about the podcast and why I kind of started thinking
Oh yeah,
around
totally. I'm gonna get there.
that.
Yeah, I'm getting there. We I like to. This is going to be a little more informal than our normal show versus business structured speech.
Okay,
Not speech, but structured podcast.
Yeah.
So just kind of let it flow. We'll get to those points. But when you actually started a while back, I remember you talking about it, and I never got all the full details. Like I didn't actually know, about your experience with your daughter and waiting in the in the waiting room. And I know that problem. That's like, oh God, are you kidding me? I did all that waiting in only 5 minutes. But back then, you also started a podcast that was totally related to your business dealings.
Yeah, that's correct.
So what made you want to do that?
Yeah, you helped me with that as well, with some of the first logos there. Uh, you know, reminds me of college. I got podcasting early. It reminded me of we used to travel cross country all the time and be in the car with my dad. He listened to a lot of tapes. He was a traveling sales guy, and so we listened to a lot of like tapes, like I don't know if you know Zig Ziglar and those sales guys, and he would and listen to talk radio back then before it was sports radio. So I always was a big listener of radio, just by osmosis. And so when podcasts became a thing, I got it right away. I was like, this is just like radio on the internet, right? So it's like radio, but on the internet. So I just got it right away, man. And so I always wanted to do something with it. So yeah, I think did was around at the time I was working with a large tech company called Cisco Systems, and the big thing was called cloud computing, which I think everybody knows about now because of the Amazon and things like that. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that, and that was back in I want to say 2012, about 2011, 2012. And so I just brought on guests and talk about technology and enjoyed that, and did some small podcasts, but did it for a year, did one recording a month, but really enjoyed it, man. And, kind of wish I stayed in it at the time, could have done some big things. 'Cause I was early stages. It's not like it is now. It was pretty raw. Trying to get things up there on iTunes back in the day.
Yeah, I think you may remember. I don't know if you were around. You were around, but I don't know if you ever jumped in on any of our Comic-Con recordings. I can't remember if you did or not.
I remember I did do one of them. It's still on YouTube out there where I was there live. You did something at an event, and we had a panel discussion back in the 8-bit, qubit days when you guys would go around and speak to folks. But I think I did one. I think I did one or two like a couple years later. But yeah, I remember a little bit.
Yeah, it was definitely raw back then. I remember because we were cutting edge, just trying stuff and putting together the XML files so that iTunes could read it. But I definitely, what happened was I had all the data right on my computer, and I had a backup hard drive, and I was like, all right, whatever. And then I actually had a separate backup hard drive. So I had two backup hard drives in my computer that had all these podcasts on it that we recorded. And then at one point I was like, you know what? I need to transfer a bunch of these movie files because I was trying to take my entire DVD collection and move it to digital. So I was like, all right, I need space. I'm going to wipe off one of these hard drives. So I wiped off one of my hard drives. Then my computer fails. So I'm like, oh man, computer's about to fail. I should copy all this stuff over to the backup drive just to make sure. So I start copying it over, and it says it copied fine. I'm like, cool. All right, so let me get a new computer. Got my new computer. Then I go back to the backup drive, and it's just busted. I'm like, oh, it's all corrupt. What happened? So now I got a bunch of DVDs ripped to one hard drive, a corrupted drive, and then my computer, the one that was attached to my computer, was all, it was just kind of busted. It was failing on me. So I was like, man, oh well, nothing on there was very important. Months later, I realized like, oh crap, the podcasts were on there, and then so.
Oh, Ben.
Most of those old podcasts are gone in the internet somewhere. But yeah, we didn't have like a cloud hosting solution, I had to have it on some FTP server somewhere. And I was using Yahoo as my hosting at the time. And they only keep backups if you flag them specially for them to keep them. So yeah, it became a thing. Sorry. But that's that story.
Now, well, I think when I started, they had there was some cloud version of hosting where you could host your podcast. So I was a little bit, not cutting edge, but at the early stages of some cloud hosting sites that had a way you could hold your podcast, but you had to pay monthly to keep it active. But yeah, I can imagine Well, thank God it wasn't Bitcoin, right? So then you've been really pissed.
Ooh. Yeah, right. Okay, so you're doing the podcasting thing. You got the radio vibe going on. Um, it's taking you into this new era. Did you expect podcasts to get where they are now? Because now it's a thing.
I kind of did when I saw like because I started listening to them way more like around the time I started doing podcasts. I don't know if you know like Bill Simmons. He used to be on ESPN. He has a whole network in sports. And then I used to listen to a lot of TV podcasts, right, just to kind of do recaps because I had no one else to talk to about this stuff. So I wanted to listen to the latest like Breaking Bad breakdown or something like that via podcast. So those are my early forays into it. And then, but
Yeah.
when they start having guests on there, I was like, okay, this is gonna be big, because I think that's when I said, okay, this is, especially if you have, headphones, like I'm wearing wireless headphones now, they'll start to, I think Beats by Dre start to become more prevalent, and so you're starting to see people having headphones in more often when they're running, jogging, working out. So it's just a matter of time before they become more relevant. But I mean, so I thought it had potential. The challenge was, how you monetize it, right? And I think so. This is, the business side of it,
Mm-hmm.
advertising, right, which is still early stages, and so people reading copy was always the beginning stages of that. Which, to be honest with you, in over 10 years or so, it's been like this. They haven't really changed the model too much, so that I think they're trying to change that up with some subscription based stuff. But so to answer your question is that I saw there was potential there, right? I just didn't know, how big it could become. But it seems like, to your point, everybody and their mama has a podcast now or YouTube channel, and so this is different voices out there now.
Yeah, totally. Now, so everybody and their mamas making podcasts. We're all becoming our own media outlets and channels. Um, and I think you can't. I'm not sure why exactly, but you came to me with the whole show versus business idea, and what made you kind of stop and say, you know what, let's go ahead and make this. Oh God, are you okay?
I'm okay.
um, so yeah, the show versus business thing. What made you decide to stop and say, you know what, let me do this podcast?
Well, I mean, number one, I think, if you're going to do something like this and, quote unquote, the entertainment business, or just anything, it starts from a sense of, passion, because I do believe it's got to be something that's going to be easy for you to do. And this is something that I've always, been interested in. I'll always listen to stuff on YouTube, IGN. I used to read Deadline. I still do, just curious about where all this is going, right? And I guess so at the time it was, into 2020, right? We just did a lot of changes were happening in the entertainment industry, right? With the pandemic, movie theaters were getting, basically were closed. Streaming was becoming more prevalent. We saw YouTube influencers make, millions of dollars, right? Instead of just thousands of dollars. We saw content creators become more relevant, influencers become more relevant. And so I said, hey, you know what? This is a good inflection point to kind of get in the mix here, because this thing is about to explode. Because behaviors were changed. I mean, think about it. In a span of 1 year, we've all changed into more of a streaming, type, content driven type of society, as opposed to more event driven, where we go to concerts or we go to movies, right, and stuff like that. And so I figured, this is a good time. So the timing, something I was passionate about, and then, and I felt that had a, unique spin I could bring to the table, right? With my background in business, but also, as a black man looking at it from a different perspective, as someone who's been interested in this for years. And then, but I knew I needed a partner, someone that understood maybe more the show than I did, and how you create content or how you create things that people like. And so I did reach out to an artist you may know, who used to understand a lot of this stuff, and just understand how you create content, right? And how do you not just movies, but understand story, right? Because building games and all that stuff that you did in your previous life, I think was relevant. So I figured that we would have a good counterbalance. So that's kind of why I thought it was just timing, right? 2020 showed us changes. If something I could be sustainable for, I knew it was going to be sustainable. I could do it with someone that I feel I could bounce off of. So that's why I did it, and I thought it was good time to start it.
Awesome. And what's amazing to me is that when we started the podcast, it really didn't take us long to get together a rhythm, and we hadn't talked at length on all these topics like that just in a while, almost a decade. I would say, really get down and talk on a lot of these things, and I totally thank you for that. I'm like, you can just kind of jump back into these things, and this is like back in college when we were sitting in the dorm talking mad shit about
exactly
the X-Men cartoon and whether they were gonna
look. I literally have it here on my notes. I put college. That's college feel, right? It was just like because it was like very similar time when you and I would just spend hours just talking about all kinds of stuff, right? And I felt that this is kind of similar vibe. Off of, I think it's really important to have interesting podcasts because those are the ones I like to listen to. So you got it, you nailed it. Hey, give me 1 second. I'm going to switch out and see if this is a better, so we don't have too much of a lag.
All right, sounds good. Let's see. Sounds fine. So how you boy Bill is saying, we're doing it live.
How that sound now? Is that better or is it about the same?
Oh, you sound good.
Okay, yeah. So hopefully it's not as much of a lag there with the Wi-Fi, but the Bluetooth phones, headsets. But yeah, man. I think this is a good time to start one. And you know what? I guess we'll get to it. But almost 8 months, going strong, once a week and putting out good content. And, I think that the importance of, I guess the importance of doing it now is there's just so much content. I mean, it's just like amazing about the stuff that we can talk about and write about and discuss, man. And it seems like, it's just not enough, podcasts to cover everything because it's too much. So I think there's a space for us here, so that's kind of how I look at it.
So yeah, in case anybody's wondering about the vibe of the podcast, two Black college roommates, one, who's both spent time on California and in Florida, talking about the show side of things and the business side of things in popular media, streaming wars, comic books, movies, etc. We kind of have our own little lane in that. And yeah, so this is something, you probably wouldn't have heard about being pitched before, but now it's like, if there's somebody out there like you, they can probably find you on the internet, and it's just weird. I mean, I was posting some stuff a couple years ago, and I first started getting into analytics, and I was like, oh, you can find out what country these people are coming from and everything. And I had a huge spike in Brazil for some reason. Like, I didn't know anybody in Brazil, or I have no connections to it, but nevertheless, I was getting all these views and hits from Brazil. So I was like, okay, this is the internet. But that went away.
No, I love it. And it's definitely a long tail. So basically what that term basically means, you just create enough content, get it out there. I'm a big believer in that. And then eventually, the algorithms start to find you over time. Right. And so that's kind of how I look at it.
Check this. I want you to give them a little explanation on the long tail and how it matters to creatives right now, because a lot of creatives, they tend to start creating and they get kind of discouraged that they don't have like these blockbuster hits that they think they should be having.
Yeah. I mean, so high level, from my understanding of long tail, is basically the internet. nothing ever gets erased from the internet. And so it's there, that's searchable, that someone can reach out to it, especially if it's, search engine optimized, where if you do a Google search for it, then you'll be able to find it, right? Whether it's through social media now or YouTube channels, things like that. So you just don't know what's going to pop, right? What you talked about maybe 6 months ago, what you put out there 6 months ago, maybe one of those things that just pops all of a sudden. So imagine long tail. The good example of long tail is like, let's say you're a doctor talking about pandemics right before COVID, right? And you're just talking about it because that's your passion and all that. I guarantee your audience, everything spiked up in March of 2020 because of the pandemic. People there's more interest in it, right? It was more relevant at that time. So long tail just means having that content that's available and packed in. And then, maybe you can talk more about the algorithms, but over time, they're optimized to kind of figure out what's relevant and what people want to see more of. And then if they find that out, they push more of that your way, right? So the challenge with that, though, as we saw through an election, is you get in a bubble and you basically don't get any new content or new ideas because they're just going to keep pushing stuff you liked previously or that's related to the stuff you like. So you can't get, blinders on, what you think and all that because you're kind of getting bombarded by the same, for lack of a better term, group think, right? But the long tail, though, I think, having content out there that's relevant, you just don't know what's going to pop, but having quality content consistently out there, and then, the algorithms will find you over time. And so I'm a big believer in that because, all it cares about is just what's going to get people engaged. And if you have content that's relevant for whatever reason, they're going to push it out there.
The algorithm doesn't give a damn about you, dog. Just give it the engagement.
I mean, if anybody's been on TikTok, the algorithm don't give a damn about you, man. Because who knows why that stuff goes viral? Does anyone know why that stuff goes viral, Mr. Benja?
It's weird, right? Because we're in a place where we're chasing this kind of viral thing, but it's still elusive to everybody, and it kind of avoids people who are really trying for it. And even the people who are good at it and say they have a formula will tell you, well, look, you're just upping your probability. You're not like going to go viral because you want to, it's still going to surprise you, maybe one day, you forget to turn on the audio and you go viral for, man waving fist at camera with no audio or something like that, and it's just, you can't tell. So, the long tail, keep putting that content out there.
And then you find out that people, that's probably why TikTok, you see like someone goes viral for one thing, and then pretty much that's all they do, right? That's just their format, right? And it's just like, you're like, how did they do that? Because they did it one time, you probably got hit pretty hard. So now they got to constantly do the same thing over and over again. So it's just crazy, man.
That's actually, I don't want to say depressing, but that goes against a lot of creatives' like way of thinking because, before you didn't have such a concept of going viral. You're like, hey, let me work on my craft. Let me put things out the way I want to, and I will teach people around me or teach people in my local gallery scene or whatever how I do things, and they'll adjust. Now it's like, the algorithm picks what it's like and then gives you the opportunity. It's like, you get on this train and do what you did last week in a different way, or we drop you off and go to the next person. And
well, can I push back though? Can I push back?
Push back, son.
I think though, true artistry is there when there's constraints, right? Just, if you're an artist, your constraint is the canvas, right? You can't go beyond that canvas. You have that canvas. You only have these type of colors, right? So just like the virality of your content, if they say, okay, you have to produce something that if you're shaking your fist, that's silent. So people like that. So now what can I do with that, right? Can I put pictures of me punching Mike Tyson, or can I, show, going up in the sky like Superman? So it's like, that's where the creativity comes in, right? If people like that particular piece of it, I think you can play in that canvas. You just got to know the parameters, right? I mean, because that's what if you can't be creative, there's no boundaries, right? Because then there's no. Is that correct?
I know you're dropping heat, man. I love it.
Why?
No, because I mean, the creative side like doesn't want to hear that, but to a certain degree, it's like you are going along with this energy, this flow of popular media or whatever, and now I've started to, I don't do it perfectly every time because I've got a project sitting over there on the side that no one's going to see yet because it's going to take a lot of work and it's not currently the hot thing, or I don't even see it as something viable right now, but I'll get to it. But you've got this this vibe going on, and the vibe is like, hey, we gave you a little success here. Now, can you use that as a challenge, a constraint, as you say? Can you use that as a framework to build from? And you know what? I had to set my ego back, my artistic ego that sits up in the mountains thinking about random shit. I had to set that aside and say, you know what? I can do even more if I work with these constraints and go with that energy flow. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that from doing studies of great creators. It's like you talk about building MS-DOS out. You only had certain ways of displaying colors. You only had certain ways of doing this, and the video game designers had to work with those constraints. You talk to just any of the Zuckerberg. Mm-hmm. Zuckerberg was building out these applications. He had this file transfer thing going on, right? Nobody wanted to hear about his file transfer nonsense. They were like, yeah,
I do remember that. That.
They're like, file transfer, yeah, whatever, shut the hell up. What's this thing with a hot or not? What's this, mm-hmm. thing about, everybody posting on a stream, a wall or whatever? What's that about? And he's like, well, yeah, but see, we have files and we can instantly transfer the files. And what it does is it caches it along the different trail in the network. And they're like, yeah, I don't care. This wall thing is cool, Is that a thumbs up? I like that thumbs up. And you're like, and he was kind of flabbergasted by it, but he said that he humbly understood what was going on. And this is probably with assistance from Parker, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That got him to like. No.
I was thinking that Justin Timberlake line. You know what's cool? Being worth $1 billion. Go ahead. So Justin Timberlake played Sean Parker in the Facebook movie, so that's why I thought about
that. The Social Network, right?
Yeah, Social Network.
If you haven't seen that, that's actually a good movie in general, especially for creatives and those entertained by this type of creative versus business discussion.
So let's dig into this deeper. So I would argue that there cannot be creativity without constraints. Okay. And I think that constraints and creativity, or if you will, business and show, are the yin and yang, right? You can't have one without the other. And I think that's why, I came up, or we discussed having this name, show versus business, because they need each other, right? Because the business creates the constraints, right? You have to operate within the market, what people want. You have to operate in, profit and loss, understand that, branding. But then within that, how can you create something that people have never seen before, right? And it's going to be relevant to them and make them feel something. And to me, that's why, I thought show versus business was huge, because we can talk about the constraints and then how people have, surpassed those constraints, right? And that to me is where the magic happens. And that's just in everything, even in sports, right? You think about like LeBron James or Michael Jordan, they're constrained by the rules of basketball, but within that, they do amazing things. And to me, that's huge, man. I think that's where the magic happens.
Totally. And, I don't disagree with you there. I think it's where the constraints come from that bothers a lot of creatives, because most creatives will put constraints on themselves if given, a little space, like they're like, you know what, screw it. I'm only painting in black, blue, and orange, and they only use these three paints right here. What's up, family? Hello, Virginia. Yeah. And, the constraints are fine. It's just, there's something about the feeling of a constraint put on you from an external money source, where all of a sudden it starts to feel like a job. You know what I mean? I've gotten better at this because I remember one time I was like, you know what? This is good. This is awesome. People are digging it. It's going to be a thing. And I wrote it down on my whiteboard. Do this awesome thing. The minute I wrote it down, I was just like, ugh. It's a job. It's a job now.
Oh, well, I guess, man. But isn't that everything, man? I mean, you can't, before you become Picasso, you gotta understand the fundamentals of just art in general. And he probably, thousands of hours just painting, what daisies, right? To get to where he is, his structure. So I get it. I think the consistency, diligence. There's freedom in that, because this is just what I do, right? So it's almost not thinking, but then within that, where's the creativity come? So, but I get what you're saying. It, because I think we're all, we're humans. We want the varieties, the spice of life, but then we need that structure, right? Because if we didn't have that, then how could we have faith that anything would exist, or we can, plan for the future? So, anyway, it's a philosophical question, and so I think show versus business gets into the, it's high level, fun about genre, storytelling, and all this other stuff, but it's a fundamental question I think humans have been wrestling with, for eons, because we always want, the flashiness, but the change, the variety, but we also, value that structure. So it's going to be interesting.
Totally. And if you're here listening, make sure you drop in the comments what podcast player do you prefer, if any? How do you listen to your podcast? Just let us know, because I'm always curious as to how people, get on podcasts, find them. I'm out there searching for stuff actively, and I hear about a new podcast player. I start using it. I just started using Castbox, actually. I really like that one, just because you can download and organize your playlist. So anything you've heard before, you kind of scroll back and like, oh yeah, I like listening to this speech at the Montreal Convention Center or whatever nonsense. So it's growing. But let me jump to this point. Speaking of the show versus business thing, it's really coming to a head now, I think, with a lot of the nostalgia that people are trying to create. They're trying to bring up, not just the nostalgia, but the social, the social commentary that's coming out of a lot of these projects. It's like, hey, well, we have to have a show where we showcase blah. And it's like, okay, well, creatively that might not fit. And it's like, too bad, do it anyway. So between those two, that's where I'm seeing like the current friction at, in terms of show versus business really making, you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. I think, it's just like, it does seem manipulative too, kind of playing on nostalgia and your childhood. And we kind of talked about that on one of our podcasts, but, I do feel that, that's where, the creativity is, what other things can we meme to create, feelings? And they're leveraging nostalgia, right, to kind of create those feelings within the structure of, a story, right? And so let's wrap some IP around like G.I. Joe, or, or He-Man, or some, some characters, the Care Bears guy, for, whatever, right, that you liked when you were younger, that brings back good memories. And then, how can we wrap a story that's relevant to today, right? Because you can't tell those stories back in the day. You see some of those old TV shows, man? Some of them are hard to get through, man. It's like, dude, what are they thinking, man? Either the story doesn't make sense, or it's just very inappropriate to how our sensibilities today, right? But
yeah.
But I think that's just another tool in the toolbox that they pulled out. So it's nostalgia now, but I'm sure it's going to be some other tools that they're going to figure out over time, right? As we get as we kind of think through this and things evolve. But I don't know. Do you feel that that's a low blow going after nostalgia plays in the structure of show versus business?
I think it's a good play. I think I think it's a good play. It's a fair play. I think it's a play that should happen. But I don't like constraints like this when they come about because no one had any better idea. Like I'm not sure if someone's sitting around and saying, you know what, if we really think about what the 80s cartoon Mask was saying, you have to put on a mask and blah, blah, blah. And it was just a toy thing. Okay, what was the spirit of what did people get out of it, et cetera, et cetera. And, it kind of, no one's really thinking that. I've worked at a toy company, and it's just like somebody will get off the phone and they'll be like, hey, can we do anything with the license for such and such? What technology do we have that can make use of this? And da da da. Well, we can do this, this, and this. Are we willing to pay for it? And I get that's fine, and that's how it happens. But in those discussions, they very rarely have a discussion about, hey, what's the soul of this project? Do we really want to do this? Is this a direction we want to take? Mm-hmm. So usually they're trying to figure out something to do, and then they go ruffling in their box of licenses or whatever that they could find.
What's that? Oh, here it is. He's got it. So can I push back again?
Do it. That's what we do. Show versus business.
Diverse. Well, I would say there's been one recent example that's done it well, and obviously we got one recent example that hasn't done it well. So maybe we'll talk about the first one, which has done it well. It's Cobra Kai. They took the spirit of the Karate Kid and really turned it on his head.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for those that don't know, Karate Kid was a film that was in the 80s. They brought it back as a YouTube show, and then it is now a Netflix show. And basically, they turned it on his head. Instead of focusing on Daniel LaRusso, they just moved the camera over to his antagonist, right? Johnny. What was Johnny's last? I'm going to draw a blank on Johnny's name, but that's come to me later. Yeah. But his nemesis in the original movie, and it was a revelation, right? And so by just turning that channel the camera 1 degree over, and then you could tell all these different stories, right? It's just an angle, right? And I think that was wonderfully done, right? And so I think you can find taking nostalgia, taking IP licensing, and then thinking creatively and find a different angle, and it works, right, when it shouldn't. We do have an example of something that did not do that well. That was a recent example of Masters of the Universe, right? They basically took the He-Man story and mythos and turned the camera to a different character, but instead of turning it slightly, they basically took the camera, threw it on the ground, smashed it to bits, go bought another camera down the street. And it was one of those old time cameras where you have to rack it like this to keep the story going. So I think, it's just to your point. I think it has to be the caring of the creative to really say, okay, that really dig. Once you make that change, that slight change, for nostalgia plays, then to your point, keeping the spirit in mind, right? The characters don't really change. It's just a different perspective. And I think if you do it that way from a creative standpoint, I think there's gold there, right? With a lot of these projects.
Yeah, definitely. And, people are going to like what they like, and I'm fine with them liking it or not. And there are reasons to like it, but I do look at these projects and I can tell that, okay, this wasn't taken with the kind of care that the people who I knew, or I think the spirit of the product, would have agreed with. And, we had a lot of these discussions when we were building Red Dead Redemption. Okay. We're coming from Red Dead Revolver, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, that started out as this kind of wacky project.
Well, real quick, before we dive into this, so was Red Dead Revolver, was that a hot property?
It was a hot property.
Okay. But Red Dead Redemption was a totally different. I mean, it was based on the same premise, but you guys totally revamped it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much a total revamp. And Jeff's in there too, so if he can have he has input on that, he can let you know in the comments too. but there was a lot of wacky stuff that was in the original Red Dead Revolver, and it was coming from a different time, a different a development cycle. We were dealing with Capcom in the very beginning, and Capcom does the Street Fighter games, Mega Man, so they have a lot of more of a cartoony vibe than Rockstar Games does. So now we're developing something new. It was really difficult to just put something in the game. We couldn't just put something in the game and say, I like that. You had to put something in the game, go talk to the original developers, find out if it makes sense. And there was this long and drawn out back and forth process where we were trying to figure out, okay, how can we go above and beyond without, even if we're not doing it intentionally, without making people seem like we're shitting on where we came from or where we were in the past. So, people were talking about like, there's this guy like Dynamite, Pig Josh. Pig Josh had like dynamite strapped to him and, a dynamite hat. He was one of the wacky characters, right? So how do you bring something back like that in a way that kind of makes sense? You do the thing. If you've seen the Netflix Marvel shows, you kind of see how they reference stuff like, okay, we're going to reference Luke Cage's crazy outfit, but we want people to understand that this is a different look. We understand. We respect it. We're not
It's
shitting.
a different tone. It's not a different tone, right? You're going for a different tone. Yeah.
And we're not shitting on it. I think I got mad when, not mad, but I was like, what they need to do that for when Thundercats Roar, the very first intro to it was like, Lionel looking at this 80s TV, like, what kind of stupid technology is this? And he cuts the TV in half and like starts railing on it. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't get why you would have that kind of intro. That just sets a bad tone already. Like, we don't like where we came from. And what's fascinating to me is that the people who are pushing this thing, the people who would share all these links, the people who are going to hype this up and go watch it are the people you're kind of joking on. So I don't know if they were trying to be edgy, trying to be funny, but the jokes didn't land. Mm-hmm. It's something you have to take a lot of care with. And as someone who's done stand-up comedy for a while, I know about taking care with the audience. You can't just come out and say, ha ha, you're fat. It's like, whoa, what's going on? You got to be like, well, it's the truth. You are fat, sir. It's like, nah. You roll up and like, yeah, you got to make it work for the person so they're laughing, you're laughing, and you both understand the tone. Yeah, so it's difficult, but the corporations have been effing with me a while now, and I've been like, you guys
so you want to fight those corporations, don't you?
Yeah, Transformers had that problem as well. There are even stories of the people that were working on Transformers, not revolting, but like jumping up and down, screaming, like, "Why the hell would you make Optimus Prime do this?" And they were like seriously angry as developers. Like, Michael Bay, have you even watched a show? What are you talking about? So it gets weird.
Yeah, man. No. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I get it. I mean, and I get the constraints on what they're trying to do with storytelling, right? They see all these different markets they want to go after, they want to appease them, but then art can't just be appeased, right? It has to be, like you said, it has to be taken care of. You have to take people's feelings in consideration, and if you alienate, because you're saying, hey, we're trying to make a funny reference to this, how corny 80s shows were, but then the reason why the vast majority of your audience is watching it love that 80s show, you're just going to turn them off, man. And that's not good business either. So I think there's a fine line. And I think, and that's why Kevin Feige, man, he's on top of the world, man. He knows how to walk that line, right? Very well.
Yes, exactly.
And he knows how to give it, Marvel TV shows and movies, make them relevant to today. But he also walks that line to say reverence, right, to those comic book stories that we know. And he may change them up a little bit or give you a little surprise, here and there for those of us that know the stories. But for the most part, you can tell that he understands, like, if I do this thing, it will not alienate people, but it will, create interest going forward. So it's kind of interesting. You got to have that kind of balance.
Yeah, I think one of the examples, people were always saying it was a show in the 70s or a show in the 80s or whatever. You can't expect it to be the same thing. I always throw out the Captain America example and like the Iron Man cartoon. It's like, look, you go back and watch. I'll applaud you if you can make it through the 1970s Captain America. You have to take what was there and vastly improve it. And the key thing is intention. Art does not exist. Well, fine art, I should say. Fine art and film and popular acceptance of these things does not exist without intention. So when people think the intention is off, then their acceptance of it is going to be off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever seen two people look at a painting, or you're looking at a painting and someone says, all the red in this painting is made from the blood of this guy's dog who died while he was trying to finish the painting. And you're like, wait, what the hell? Are you serious? And it, that changes the context and changes the intent. So suddenly that's why the art is more valuable in that respect, because the story isn't just in what's on screen. It's what the authors are telling. So
no, but you know what? That's powerful, man. I think that's what raw in the mix is, because people know you did your homework, and that's what raw is, right? I mean, like an intention is about doing your homework, right? Having a purpose for everything you do, and it shows up, even though we may not perceive it on certain levels, but subconsciously we know what's true, right? What truth is. And I think that's the thing about it. It doesn't matter what it is, right? It could be any type of TV show, movie, or anything. What real is, and that's an amazing thing to me. I think which I saw this movie. What movie was it? It was I think it was one of those about Roger Ayers, excuse me. He was the CEO of Fox, and I don't know why I bring this up, but basically he was talking about, like, he could tell if a person was a TV star, but if he turned the volume down, he could just watch them. And then people know, the camera, he said, never lies. So people know that's who that person is, like how animated they are, how they talk, how the eyes light up, And that was genuine. And if he gets an audience by just seeing that, he said, okay, that guy's a star. So I say that all to say is, like, people know, truth. And so if you have intention, whether it's in movies or you have, there's a reason why this is in here, right? There's a reason why this is the way it is. Then I think people go with it. And it could be any story. I mean, I'm trying to think, what's the craziest story I saw? I'm trying to think. There's some crazy stories I've seen, but because you felt there was intention behind it. I mean, for instance, The Matrix, man. I mean, that was probably pretty crazy back in the day, but there was intention behind it.
Okay.
And it made the story relevant, and that was powerful.
Yes. Yeah, that was actually a good example. I remember I was at Michigan State at the time, and people were like, the computer science department was freaking nuts at the time. You're in the computer lab, and somebody would come in and yell, "Hey, we going to catch the Matrix. I got 6 tickets." And somebody's like, "I'll take 2." And people would just like run up and just bolt. It was a whole thing, because we had a theater right next to the campus.
Nice.
But yeah, it was. The computer science people were catching that intention. They were getting the idea of, like, oh man, we're caught up in the Matrix. We're just cogs in this machine programming all day, and it resonated with us. That school, ironically, it was a green and drab area in Michigan. So we were just like, holy crap, this is speaking directly to my brain. What's going on?
But just little stuff they did, man. I mean, intention, right? The way when he was in the Matrix, everything was green hinged, right? And even though we didn't know at the time, but just, intention around the color palette and things like that. And then when he was in the real world, right, it was just normal colors. And so stuff like that, it's like, people go on any story, man, as long as there's intention around everything you do and how you display it. And ironically, that's probably why the second and third ones went off the rails so bad because there probably wasn't a lot of intention, right? on
Right.
what they were trying to do with those. So, so I think to your point, you hit the nail on the head. If you have intention and truth around these, then these stories can be relevant, right? And I think Cobra Kai, our example I gave earlier, is very similar. They have intention. They have a point of view they want to get across. How do you take this guy who was the man in the 80s, that hasn't really grown up, and how does he deal with that? And then based on that, let's tell stories in that genre, right? Where we still have the same characters, but it's respect and everything that they did. And so so it's powerful, man. I mean, dude, we just figured it out. We solved show business.
Done. So being that you're so awesome in the business side of things, you're the business mage. How do you? What would you say to creatives that they need to do or need to consider or understand about the business side of things?
Wow. What is? I mean, there's so many things to think about there. I mean, I think
yes, because we're lost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go on. The fundamentals is just, what's profit, what does it take, well, first of all, just like anything, what's your market, right? Understand, what's your angle and what's your market, right? Who you're going after, how big is that market, so I think that's just, and really market from a creative, I think is basically knowing yourself. What do you like doing? Who the people you like hanging with, right? And what kind of art do you like, right? And I think that can give you opening to understanding who your market could potentially be, right? And so that's probably, so if hey, I like to paint, slow walking ants or something like that. So I like, listen to bug doctors and bug scientists, things like that. So go find the bug scientists on the internet, talk to them, right? And see what they like and see if they like art around this. And so I think understanding yourself and your audience is one. Then once you understand that, then you can try to figure out, okay, branding, right? How I'm going to brand myself in this area. So it has to be, relevant. Is a big enough market? Is it something that's sustainable? Something that you can do consistently, right? Without a lot of too much effort, because it's something you would do naturally. And then how are you different, right? How, if you're doing bug art, how are you different from like the 20 other bug artists out there, right? And so, what's your spin? Maybe your ants are red, right? Instead of just black. And so, but that's fine. Go with it. And then go all in on it. So now you the red ant guy. So every time they see you on Instagram, you got a little red ant here or something like that. And so you're just branding yourself as the red ant guy. And so now you have your market, you have your brand. So that, and then, to your point, is that long tail. Just be consistent with it, and I think you'll see, growth over time, right? If you're really passionate about it. So that's just the basics 101. How you grow an audience and how you, right. I think.
No, I totally agree. But I want to step back right quick, because branding is one of those words that turns creatives off. It's just like a buzzword that, I can guarantee you a lot of them don't get what branding really means. So what's a really quick short on branding? What is that?
Yeah, branding is how do you stand out from the crowded market, or how do you stand out from the next guy, in my opinion, is basically what makes you unique and different. And I'm one of those people, I'm a humanist, so I think everybody's unique and different, but you really have to hone in on that and can articulate it quickly and easily to the people you talk to. And that's a challenge, right? Because it's how do you distill someone who's lived on this planet, 20, 30, 40 years into like one or two sentences to differentiate yourself. But that's really what branding is. Just, that one or two things that make you totally different from anyone else in the world at what you do. And that's kind of how you stand out, and that's, I'm learning it more and more too every day, man. But, and especially in the world now where there's so much social media and all that, and so many things vying for your attention that, you need, whether it's visual, maybe you're the guy that always wears a hat, you see him, or you're the guy that always has dreadlocks, right? Boom, there you go. And so now that's the people, but then, that's your brand. So I think that's the key. I think, having that unique differentiator that makes you different. And so it's not a scary word. It's really about really thinking through, what makes you different. And I gave the framework is really looking at those three areas. Is it a big enough opportunity, a market, that people that like what you do? Is it something you can do consistently for a long time, so it's sustainable? And then also, what's different about what you do, right? And so if you kind of put in those three frameworks, Those three things. I think you can definitely stand out from the crowd and what you do. And then obviously the other thing is, being raw, right? You gotta do the work, make sure it's excellent, right? And what you do. Can't just come in crap. I mean, you might get some hits, but it's not going to last long.
Yeah, that's the dangerous thing. When you come in there, and you're not a raw dog, and you just kind of drop something and then you go away. Like T-Pain's a classic example. I was just talking about him earlier. It's like, no, T-Pain is raw.
T-Pain.
He's not just a gimmick. He's not just in the mix. Dude is raw. And people didn't get it until he just kept on coming with it. And they were like,
"You just from Tallahassee, man. You Tallahassee folks."
Yeah. He came from Riddick High School.
Speaking of which, real quick, did you see that Netflix, This Is Pop? Do you see that special when he talked about it?
I still haven't watched that one. I watched How to Be a Tyrant, which is weird and dangerous, but yes.
Yes, you watched it. We got to talk about that on this podcast.
Yeah. Coming up next on the Show versus Business podcast. So you talked about the pop thing. Okay, for those people, I haven't seen it yet, but you're going to say something about it?
Well, just, T-Pain has an episode. Basically, they go through all the different genres that would influence pop over the last, I guess, 15, 20 years. T-Pain had his own episode. I think there was one on Boyz II Men, but I was going to watch that later. But the T-Pain one was interesting because basically, it was something he took with autotune, and, that people have done it before. I think Cher had a hot hit called Believe. The actual doctor that created it, got millions and billions of dollars off of it. And it was something they used to autocorrect, vocal people. And he just took it to the next level. And they trashed him, man. They trashed him. They said he was ruining music. But the songs he had back in the early 2000s, man, everybody was bumping them, man. And they're still hot to this day. And but he said he went through depression because people, talk bad about him and all this stuff. But I think he really, and then, I think he really came back into the forefront when he, I guess he sang at on this YouTube show. What was it called? Little
The
Desk.
That Tiny Desk.
Yeah, he did one of his songs, and he did a cappella, and everybody's like, T-Pain can sing?
Oh my God. OMG.
So then, then the Masked Singer, of course, and then so I think, he's just one of those guys that, to your point, he is a true artist, but he just wasn't recognized as an artist because the gimmick he chose, or the differentiator, for lack of a better term, he chose to kind of differentiate himself from, because he talked about that too, man. If you watch that show, he talked about there's so many rappers, right? How do I stand out from these other rappers? I need a new sound. And, that was the sound he came up with. So
did you see his rant?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna post the rant up, but no, T-Pain, he's got a live stream Twitch thing, so he's doing this whole media thing himself too. But he's on Twitch and he listens to people's beats, and I think somebody said something in the comment like, "Man, you ain't even listening to my beat," and he flipped. He was like, "Do something different. It's the same thing. Do something different. How everybody coming here sounding like the baby? There's Da Baby and Lil Baby. They're already two niggas sounding like named Baby doing what you're trying to do. Do something different." And he just like went crazy on him. And it was so true. It's like, yeah, how you gonna sound?
Well, branding 101, sound different, man. Differentiate yourself. And so he's right, man. It's like, and I get it, man. It's hard because, what's the one thing, you got to experiment, play with it, something you like and something you think is something you can sustain. But he's right, man. Music, and music now, man, with SoundCloud and all this stuff, you can just put stuff out so quick. So you can experiment a lot faster. And that's probably why hip hop is so dominant right now in music, because you can put so much stuff out so quick, so much faster, than you can with other types of genres. So it's kind of interesting to see hip hop being a dominant form right now. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
We don't do a music podcast, but
basically. So let me ask this. What's coming up for Show versus Business?
Ooh,
I'm
man,
I'm
show
asking
versus
like I'm not
business.
working with you on it, but yes.
I know, man. Yeah, we're gonna probably do some more video content, try to, expand the brand a little bit. I think this year, I mean, there's been so much good IP that we've been talking about. You guys are good. You love Marvel, things like that. Definitely we're that place you can get the Marvel hits. Talk about Star Wars or Star Wars hits. But I think what we want to do is start thinking about like how do we, help creators. I think you hinted on it. Help creators with, taking their brand, for lack of a better term, to the next level, right? Understanding the business side and how you can marry that with what you're building. And so, and that would be take the form of like, emails, newsletters, just building a community around this, because I think, I think that we're in a unique time where anybody can be a creative, but, you have to follow the rules of, the structures of business in order to succeed. And I think, and we talk about that too. You don't need a lot of fans to be successful now, right? So you don't need a lot of fans to be successful now, and so we can take the lessons learned from the big guys, Marvel and DC. Well, DC, they're not doing too good, but we'll see. They're not a good example. Maybe we'll do case studies on what's a good example from an entertainment standpoint, and take those examples and apply it to your creative business, right? So you can have a sustainable business long term, because that's what life's about, man. Enjoying what you do, and if you guys are creative and doing positive things, like Mr. Benja here, man, I think the sky's the limit. So yeah, man, definitely. I'm excited about just building a community like this, that people who want to create great content. But want to create it so they can live and eat, then I think hopefully, we can give them some insight on that over time. So that's what's coming, building a community and, giving great insights over time, how they can continue to grow.
Definitely. And Jeff, I don't want to miss your comment there about TikTok, but apparently you might have to get on it. You might need that constraint. Jeff's going to be doing all the TikTok dances,
Oh man, I literally saw someone do that the other day. I was at a grocery store. Someone put their phone up. They had walked up to the counter, put a phone up, and they just start doing these little moves. I'm like, what is going on? Oh, this is TikTok.
Now
so that's now that but they look like crazy, man. They look like having a seizure. But hey, there it is, man. So
yeah, we had to. It's weird right now. That's all I'm saying. The landscape is weird. Get out there, do what you do, build, create, work on your art design and development. That's what I'm here for. And with definitely working with you, keep the show versus business going. Before we round this out, let us know, unless you've got something else going on you want to tell us. But round us out. Let us know where we can find the podcast and how to listen.
Yeah, definitely. Go listen to Show versus Business. Or if you listen to podcasts, we're definitely on Apple, Spotify, iHeart. I don't know how we got on that one, but yeah, so go check us out. We're definitely on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, Show versus Business. We have Facebook, Show versus Business, Twitter account. So definitely hit us up. We do podcasts once a week. We got over, 30, almost 35 in the bag. So go check us out. And definitely some great content coming up here in the second half of the year. We got some great movies coming out. And TV shows. So we definitely want to talk about that, as well as some content around what's going on in the stock market. We talked a little bit about meme stocks. We talked about NFTs. So if you any buzzword in business that you heard about, we probably talked about it. So go listen and go listen to get the latest and greatest on that.
Right, definitely. Because for sure, if there's a new technology, a new wave of something, you can be sure that some creative somewhere is going to jump on it and profit from it. So why not have it be you? And I think that's one of the reasons why we keep on looking at this, because, yeah, we're creatives. There's a new place to create. Boom. Let's make it a constraint. Let's go. Jeff.
I love it.
I don't care what you say, Jeff. We're going to get you on TikTok. Oh, good. Man. All right, man. That's all I got for today. I'm just gonna close this one out. It's great having you always. You're one of the easiest persons to talk to. Of course, I have like no notes here. I'm like Talk to Theo, and it's a good show.
talk to Theo. Just talk.
Yeah. Don't stop.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Thank you, man. Well, thank you for giving me this outlet to talk to everyone. And man, keep going, doing what you're doing, man. You definitely differentiate yourself out there in the industry, and doing God's work out there, man. So keep it up.
All right, man. Iron sharpens iron. I'll see you later.
Later, brother.
Peace. All right. Cool. So that was Theo, old college roommate, co-host on Show versus Business, which what we do. Stop right now. If you're not on podcast, you're not in the podcast bubble, go ahead and load up your podcast player and search for Show versus Business. Subscribe. Let us know what you think. Sure, at some point we'll have an episode or drop something that interests you. I know you're not interested in every episode we do, but as we said, with the long tail, there's something in that catalog for you that you can probably check out and enjoy. And this conversation that we just had is kind of the vibe and structure of that whole podcast. So I don't post too much about it here on my channel because I'm usually about art design development, but that's what that other podcast is about. And what's a good podcast app? I personally, if you're on Apple Podcast is simple and functional, but I prefer Castbox. Not many people use it, but I like Castbox because you can create favorites and playlists of all episodes that you found before. And it's pretty intuitive. And I don't know of another podcast player that can really like save up a library of episodes that you found. So that's Castbox. If you like something pure, simple, straight to the point, Podbean. If anybody else has any others, you can put them in the comments. Jeff mentions Spotify. Yes, we are on Spotify. You can listen to podcasts there. A lot of people like Spotify because it's both music and your podcast all in one place, so you don't have to worry about a separate app. Amazon Music now has podcasts, so if you already use Amazon Music, you can search for podcasts on that. So it's kind of whether you like, more complicated organizing, really simple. Let's see what else is there. Google Podcast. That's actually the basic player that comes with most Android type phones, so you can use that as well. Kind of similar to how Apple Podcasts is the generic podcast player for Apple. It's just simple. It kind of works. Mariah says had Podcoin but didn't use it much. Simple, easy. Yeah, Podbean is the simple, easy one that comes to mind. Let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the other ones. Pandora. A lot of people used to listen to Pandora. If you still rock with Pandora, they have podcasts on there now. There are a lot of them. If you have a friend who listens to podcasts, you may want to start with their suggestions because they'll probably relate to you, and you're like, oh, I use podcasts for this too. Let's go to the gym. So as I said, I like Castbox because you can set up playlists, and if I'm on a long drive or like driving to Vegas or something for 4 hours, I can just set up the podcast playlist. I can save off my favorites, et cetera, et cetera. So that's it. Do want to appreciate everybody who came through. If I didn't shout you out, Mrs. Official J, social media anxiety. You know what? I used to have social media anxiety. Now I'm on Instagram TV doing this nonsense, and my anxiety's gone. I have different anxieties about social media now. Special K51, Virginia Annette. Definitely thank everybody. So great session. See you tomorrow. Yep. I'll be back on here. I have a few other podcasts that I'm going to be doing for BenjaCon this week. I've got John Diaz, young developer, coming through on his stuff. Works at Electronic Arts. He's done work with Bungie. Used to work with us at Rockstar Games. Really knows his stuff. On fire. He's out there. We've got Raphael Phillips. You may have seen his work on stage with like Katy Perry. Worked at Rockstar Games with us. Jupiter's Legacy, all the costumes were 3D modeled by him. And so those constructions were made by Raphael. He, badass guy, badass artist. We're going to have him on. Have a special guest that I'm not going to announce just yet. You'll have to watch my page for it. we have a new addition to the lineup that's not on there that's going to be coming in Sunday. So those of you who know Comic-Cons and all those events, they kind of shut down on Saturday, and Sunday is the last little day. We have a special guest on Sunday. So mark your calendar for that. I'll post up information later. And yeah, we've got another marketer, another guy. A marketer is Eddie P. We've got a military guy who does art, and he is, like, when I say discipline, this guy comes at it from a military angle. So Saturday we're going to get military discipline from Josh Moreno, who can just crank out work and keep going and shape you artists up, because I know all you artists have flabby discipline in your art skills. So all right, we'll be doing that. Get at me, comment on stuff. Let's keep this interactive. We'll talk about things. If there's something I talked about that I didn't post up, let me know and I'll get back to it. But in the meantime, I will see you later. Love you all. Thank you for following along. Peace.